Yet another exciting day is over here in Switzerland, where the 57th International Biel Chess Festival is being held. The main event, of course, these are the two triathlons in the Masters and the Challengers. Today was round three in the classical tournament, part of the triathlon, and we have selected one of the most exciting games of the round, which is Jonas Bolbjerre, the top seeded player, playing against Marc-Andrea Rizzi, the reigning World Junior Champion. So we're going to walk through this game to showcase some of the critical moments, which start with knight f3, d5, and g3. The red the opening, white wants to play bishop g2, short castle, and then improvise what to do in the center. Black responded with knight c6, clearly hinting at e5, so this prompted the Danish top player to respond with d4. Bishop f5, bishop g2, knight b4. This is an immediate attack against the pawn on c2. This prompts white to respond with knight a3. This is still a theory. e6, short castle, and bishop e7 was played by the Frenchman, probably hinting at some future ideas like h5, h4 to start the potential kingside attack. Here the Danish player responded with bishop f4, knight f6, and rather unusual knight b5, counter-attacking the pawn on c7 with own fork. Now black responded with a short castle followed by a3. The pawn on c2 cannot be taken because after knight x on c2, white plays rook c1. The knight on c2 now is in trouble. There's no way black can escape from there. That's why black decided to respond with knight a6, c4, d takes on c4, and knight e5. So Bjerre sacrificed the pawn to get the proper pawn play, which is typically common in all kinds of Catalan openings. So here black responded with bishop e4, trying to counter the strong Lyskov bishop that white has on g2. The game continued with bishop e4, knight e4, and knight x on c4. Queen e5 was a great move, hitting both two knights at b5 and c4. Queen b3, bishop g5, and now we get one of the most critical moments of the game. So black is threatened with a mate in one threat on h3. As you can see, the king cannot go to g2 because the black queen stands on d5. So apparently the best move here for white was to continue with h4. Make sure there's no mate because knight h3 makes no sense. White just continues king h2. Now instead, Bjerre apparently miscalculated. He played f3 with the idea to play e4, and he thought that he's doing great after c6, knight c3, queen takes on d4, which is intended pawn sacrifice, with the point being that after e3, the black knight on g5 is in trouble. We can only guess what was his idea. I think it was probably the intention to continue with h4. Here, after h4, black would play b5, knight a5, queen takes on e3, king g2, and I can only guess that here the young Danish player was considering to play queen b6, hitting the knight on a5, and then after h takes, queen takes on a5, rook h1, followed by queen c2. There's a very interesting initiative at the king side. If this was the case, we'll never know, because here maybe Bjerre realized that knight takes on f3 is a very important addition, and then after rook takes on f3, queen b6, the same idea applies. The knight on a5 falls, and now there's no more kingside attack for white. So here he had to acknowledge the mistake has been played, and he played, instead of h4, he played a4. Now black could have simply played f6 and make sure the knight on g5 no longer is trapped. The point being, any h4 and f4 ideas, black just responds with knight f7, and queen takes on b7 is queen takes on c4. As you can see, the knight on a6 is not under attack. So here the Frenchman, however, decided to complicate the matters. He played knight c7. Now, suddenly after h4, the game got really complex. So black played b5, a takes on b5, c takes on b5, and knight a5. In some lines now, this knight on a5 is well protected by the rook at a1, and the knight on g5 is still trapped. Apparently this was still part of the plan, because the World Junior Champion continued with the queen takes on e3, king g2, and now found a very nice idea, rook d8, clearly threatening with rook d2 and a very dangerous attack. Maybe he thought that after rook f2, he's going to sacrifice the knight on f3 with the idea to meet it with rook d2 check, and white's position falls apart. However, here Bjerre found a very nice resource. He played knight d1. Now, this move hits the queen on e3. The white queen on b3 is conveniently defended by the white knight on a5. So here, rook d2 was played, rook f2, and now here the Frenchman made yet another mistake while playing queen e1. He was still having a very nice position if he had found rook takes on f2, now takes on f2, and this very difficult to pick up move, queen e2. Now the idea here is h takes on g5, black plays knight e5, plays knight e3, a very dangerous initiative for black, already having 2 pawns for the sacrificed piece. It didn't happen. He played queen e1, maybe missing white's very strong response queen e3. As you notice, that knight on g5 is still trapped. So the game continued with knight takes on f3. This was simply a forced choice for black. Queen takes on f3. Now the position simplified. There were a couple of trades on the board. Even though black got 3 pawns for the sacrificed piece, the piece is still a piece. So queen d3 was played, rook c1, f5, black tried to organize a counterattack at the king side, queen c2, and here apparently the Frenchman had continued with knight e3, knight e3, queen e3, while having a slightly worse position, but probably still possible to hold. Instead, he decided to play queen d4, opting to go for the activity. And now, after queen e2, very strong response by the Danish player, hitting the pawn on e6. King h8 was played, knight c6. White started to take over the game. After queen f6, here Biel played a human-looking move, knight f2. Apparently, the engine likes knight c3 a bit better. Here, black responded with f4, queen e5. Of course, white wants to trade queens to capitalize on the extra piece. Queen f7 was a mistake. Well, engines implied that knight e3 was a bit better with king h3, f takes on g3, queen f6, g takes, king g3, rook c8, and black is holding. But of course, white has a large advantage because those 3 pawns for black don't even feel at the moment, and a piece, it's still a piece. But the Frenchman made a final mistake, queen f7, and after the game was lost. So here, the Danish player no longer gave his opponent any chances. He played a very strong move, g4, sheltering the king. And even though the Frenchman tried to complicate the matters with knight f4, trading knight e2 checks, etc., knight e4 was good enough, taking care of the knight e2 check. Knight g6, queen e4, and black simply ran out of active ideas. So he played h6, the pawn was shortly lost on f3, rook c2, another cautious move, taking care of the e2 square, the pawn on f3 was gone, knight f3, b3, rook c4, and the final trick for black to play e5. The Frenchman hoped that after knight takes on e5, there's going to be counterattack with knight takes on h5, hitting the knight on f2. By the way, you cannot accept the knight. The point being, queen takes on f2, check, king h3, there's queen f1. Black escapes with a perpetual check because after queen g2, the rook on c4 in some lines, or even queen f5, is left unguarded. That's why instead here, Biel played king h3, and after queen takes on f2, the only winning sequence is knight g6 check. You're going to go to h7, and after king g8, queen e6 was played. Rook f7 leads to a swift mate. Rook c8, king h7, rook h8. So this was not played in the game. So the world junior champion played king h7, allowing the trade on f8. And now the final accurate move by Biel to seal the game is queen e4 check, taking care of the f3 square before collecting the knight on h5. Now you would think normally this is the position where black should resign. It still continued for a couple of moments to give us little laughs, because after g takes on h5, here the Frenchman played queen f1 check, king h2, queen f2, queen g2, and he did try his best chance, queen h4. Well, you never know. Maybe white plays automatically king g1 and drops the rook on c4. Of course, Biel saw this in 0.1 second. He took the queen, and the Frenchman, smiling, resigned the game. Rather spectacular game, don't you say? Now let's check the final rankings after round 3. There's obviously more games incoming, but this is the current situation in both Masters and Challengers. Abhimanyu Mishra today played a relatively quick draw against Limle, the second player right now behind him with 1.5 points. Also, Ike Matriosyan is within the striking distance after drawing today with Pragananda. In the Challengers tournament, Vaishali scored a rather surprising 3rd victory in a row. After it was Ihor Samonenkov who was gifted unexpected winning chance. He was unable to capitalize on it, and even more, he made a couple of grave mistakes in a row ended up by losing the game. Salem Saleh had a very promising position against Alexander Donchenko. He underestimated the chances of the opponent's defenses and missed the drawing idea by his opponent, ended the game in a draw. The action will continue next day, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. Make sure you catch us live. In the meantime, say goodbye. Have a great evening. See you soon.